You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, Pete and I continue our conversation with Fan2Fan All-Stars Alan, Brooke, and Rebecca, and we're talking about movie theaters. That's right, we've assembled a number of Fan2Fan All-Stars, and we talk about going to movies, why we love it, some of our favorite theaters, we share some of our favorite movie-going experiences, and we also talk about the evolving state of movie theaters, what's going to happen to them in the future. We talk about it. Here we go.
We're all kind of like weirdos and freaks. I say that in the best way possible, in that we will seek out we'll seek out stuff beyond the tentpole type movies. And I think there's certainly there's the younger generation that you have to meet them where they're at. And so they're on their own screens and they're watching it on the subway or they're watching it, wherever. For a younger generation, they're not as concerned, but I'm generalizing because obviously there are people, Alan and Bex, like your daughter, that will go out and go seek that cinema experience. But I think a lot of people are just like, I'm going to watch it on the screen where and when I want. And there's nothing wrong with that. I look at it as, it kind of sucks that people aren't going to the theater as much as they once did. But I know that I'm still going to go. And, the experience might not be as fun because the movie's not as full as it once was. But I still look back on something like that movie that I saw this year in the theater, All of Us Strangers, which might be my favorite film of the year. There's just something about it. And I looked it up because I was curious. I think it's like 85th, as far as like box office for the year, but it had like a limited release and it got like a bunch of hype. But I think back and like if I had seen that in my apartment, would I've had the same emotional reaction to it, maybe on some level. But I think there's still something about being able to see that in the theater. I was in Brooklyn visiting my cousin and got to go see it with his girlfriend at this place in where there's literally like the subway ran underneath the theater. So at different points in the movie, you hear the rumble of the subway cars going underneath. And, in some respects, like maybe that would take you out of the movie, but I'm just like, this is like just a fucking cool experience. I'm in a movie theater that's over a rail line. I'm like, it's just something weird and bizarre about that, but it's also unique. And it's something that will obviously be, imprinted on my brain, hopefully until, the Alzheimer's sets in and I forget, everything. But for now, I'm going to remember that, for the rest of my life.
Maybe that'll be the one thing that sticks.
So on my deathbed, I'll be like quoting lines from All of Us Strangers.
And now, ladies and gents, it's yo time. Come with me into the world of celluloid magic. Come enjoy the mystery, the romance, the horror, and the humor. Enjoy the show.
Well, that's the other part, too, that you brought up, Pete, is that the one thing I think we've all talked about, which is also amazing, is the communal experience. This is like a kind of, it'll feel like a throwaway movie, but I remember watching, again, because I saw everything at one point, because I was just like, it's cheap, it's fun, it's cool, going to the theaters. South Park, the movie. And it was probably like a 1 p.m. showing on a Tuesday, a random Tuesday I had off. And if you've worked in retail, if you get like a day off during the day, it's like the best thing because you like run all your errands, you do everything you can. And if you're done by noon, you go to the theater. Like at least that's what my life was like. And here I am, it's like 1:15 and it was gray hairs as far as you could see in the auditorium. Like, I don't know if every elder care bus like stopped at the theater and dumped off every grandma and grandpa at the show. And then they all walked into South Park, the movie. But it was
weird.
It was so weird. But Brooke, I'm telling you, it was one of the most fun movies that I've ever seen in a theater because everyone laughed and thinking this is so inappropriate for this audience. At least it felt that way. But everyone just cracking up. And then now I've seen that movie maybe 2 or 3 times afterwards on cable or streaming. And it like I'm transported to that moment, but it's not as funny. There was just something about watching a moment like that, or even watching some of the Phantom Menace when it came out. And regardless of what you think about the movie, I'm watching Star Wars with my tribe, with a bunch of people, and this experience feels pretty cool. I have to imagine the same thing that your daughters feel when they're watching anime. Like I think about like those Fathom events where you've seen Riff Tracks or the Carolina Theater where you and Brooke saw Dawn of the Dead. It's like, oh, those niche movies where you just know everyone around you, they were impacted by that movie in some way similar to you. So you're like, yeah, like you can do the nod because you're like, yeah, you're my people. There's something amazing about that. But at the same time, there's also amazing about going to theater and you're like, wait, it's 1 minute till it starts and I'm the only person here. Oh my God, this is also insanely special.
I was going to ask, do any of you all go to the theater by yourself?
I'm so happy that you asked that. I don't anymore, but before I met Rebecca, I went to the movies by myself constantly. During the day, at night, I became addicted to it. I used to like go in with like a bag of cheeseburger in my pocket and like a beer, like, and just like a piece of shit 2:00 in the afternoon watching Munich, right, by myself, like drinking and eating cheeseburgers. But there is something that's just so it's special, right, to be in a movie theater by yourself, watching a movie by yourself. Well, like everybody is kind of wondering, like, why are you by yourself?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I just always kind of felt like when I was at the movies by myself, like I was giving myself a treat, almost similar to like when you're homesick from school when you're a kid and you're kind of like, all right, is it going to be Breakfast Club? Is it going to be Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Is it going to be 16? Like, what am I going to treat myself with while I'm homesick? I get that same feeling like I'm almost getting away with giving myself something.
Yeah. Yep.
I've only done that once, and it was not the time I saw Dawn of the Dead, obviously, with you, Pete, but the time before that, when it was in 3D, and I was like mortified because I was like, I'm going, not mortified, because I knew at this point, because I was like 42, 43, I was like, I have to go see a movie by myself. That's like something I should do. And I did, and it was fine. And then I'm like, why was I so afraid of this all this time? And I haven't done it again, but I have a feeling I'm going to, because, you know, I'm now like newly just kind of single, and I'm trying to like stay that way for a while. And so I'm like, I might be going to some movies by myself. That doesn't really bother me so much anymore because I've done it. Like even going to a restaurant by yourself, that's kind of hard the first time. And sitting like in a table by yourself, like I've done that once, maybe twice. And that feels weird. But at the same time, it's like, it's really not that big deal. Like once you do it, you're like, okay, I can do this again. And you're right. It's like that thing where like no one's judging you. No one, like, I didn't really feel like anyone's judging you, because like once you sit down, you're like, no one cares.
I think it's something to celebrate because you're at a good place where you're not withholding stuff that you know you love from yourself. Where you're like, I'm okay going to see this movie. And you know what? Like, who cares if I see it by myself? Because like you said, no one else does.
And I like a lot of really stupid, like romantic comedies that, you know, my ex would not like. And guess what? Now I get to watch them and I don't care. And I'm going to go to the theater and do it and be happy about it.
It's weird because I have like these random memories that I have very specific recollections of. And I can remember the first time I went to the movies by myself. I was still on Long Island and I went to see Escape from LA. And it was my mistake. I went to a Friday night showing at like 8:00 and was not prepared for the movie theater to be packed. And it was. And I was in my early 20s. And so I was very self-conscious about it because I'm like, oh my God, all these people are judging me. All these people are here as groups and on dates and whatever. And they're all going to see this movie. And here I am like looking for like a single seat for myself. And I just remember just like the heat, like it was like sweating because I'm like, oh my God, can I do this? And then I got through it and I'm like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And if I want to go see a movie and no one's around, then I'll go do it. And like Alan, to your point, like it's like it's definitely it's treating yourself a little bit. And like Bernie, like you said, it's like why should I deprive myself of going to see a movie that I really want to see if there's no one else around that's going to go see it with me? And the answer is there's no reason to do that.
I just think that the only reason why I don't go to movies anymore by myself, because there would be opportunities. She she has these weekends where she works all weekend photographing weddings, right? And like I have nothing but time. What I would feel guilty about is seeing a movie that we both want to see without her. Let me tell you the shit I get for starting a series that we might want to watch together if I don't wait for her. So I'm not going to go see a movie that we might be interested in, with all my running mate.
And
so.
there's rarely a movie that you want to see that I wouldn't want to see. That's the thing. There are movies that I want to see that he probably wouldn't care so much for, but it almost never happens the other way around. The other thing, though, on my end is that if I want to see something and it is like a stupid, girly, romantic movie, he's still going to come with me. He doesn't care. He likes to go to the movie.
Do the time, people.
There's still popcorn.
Yeah,
that's right.
If there's something like on the rare occasion that it's something he really doesn't care for, I've already been asked by my daughters if we can see it. So like there's, anything that ever comes up where like I would have the chance to go by myself. And I've never really like cared about that, but now I'm a little jealous that I've never done it once.
Attention, please. A $50 reward will be paid for information leading to the arrest and conviction of anyone caught stealing our speakers. If you accidentally pull a speaker loose, don't worry. Just turn it in. There is no charge, and we'd appreciate it.
2024, feel like this is like some interesting inflection year where you've had all these things happen. 2023, there were the strikes, which just means less movies were ready to come out in 2024. You have less movies that seem to kind of break through for whatever reason. Like there are still those movies you mentioned earlier, Pete, Inside Out 2. The new Bad Boys seem to resonate with a lot of people who I think were happy to see them. But then there were movies like Furiosa and The Fallout Guy that were supposed to be magnets to attract people. And by whatever measure, right, if you kind of read the interwebs, they're almost considered box office failures because they didn't bring in enough people to the theaters to see them. That impacted their box office and how they were viewed. There's something maybe about this year. Maybe it's because we're kind of seeing I'm not sure if like the whole pandemic thing is still kind of a part of it, where people being afraid of being in theaters. I think it's probably like all the above. It's all these things mashed up together with maybe a more segmented audience that's more willing to wait because they don't have that thing that maybe we all grew up with, which is I want to see in the theater. Or for some folks, including some of your kids, they'd be like, I'm just going to wait because that's what I'm used to. So it feels like we're in a transition period between what we grew up with as we were getting into our own as teenagers and like young adults, once we had money, once we had expendable income and we could go to the movies, to what it's going to be moving forward this year and certainly, past 2024.
I'll jump off of that, Bernie, because some of the research that I did. So there's a website called thenumbers.com, free box office information. So those of you that are subscribed to IMDb Pro and have to pay for it, I think this is better. But I was looking at the numbers and they track going all, like way back, but this is all adjusted for inflation. But they did like a total box office, like domestic box office goes back to 1995. And from 95 until 2019, when the pandemic hit in 2020, on average, every year, movies as a collective made between about $13 billion and $16 billion. And then when you get to the pandemic, 2020, it goes down to 2, which makes sense because we were all home. 2021, still in the pandemic, it goes up to 4.7 billion. And then as we come out of the pandemic, 2022, 7.5 billion. Last year, 9 billion. So like the trend starts going up. But 2024, what's projected for the end of the year is going to only be 7 billion. So it's kind of hit a stagnant line and way below where it was in 2019 when the pandemic hit. Probably just anecdotal, but I saw it interesting because it listed the average ticket price every year from 95 until 2023. The average ticket price went up some increment of money until this past year, 2023, 2024. Average ticket price is $10.78, and it stayed flat. And I think that's partly because they're trying to get more people back into the theater. But I thought that was really interesting how you started to see a little bit of a comeback to the theaters after the pandemic hit. But now it's looking like we've plateaued here in 2024. So I think that kind of bolsters what you're talking about, Bernie. And maybe what we've been talking about this whole episode is how there's not that desire for people in general to go in. Like, I mean, I appreciate that you called the Fall Guy the Fallout guy.
Oh, sorry.
Referring to Walton Goggins, I'm guessing, but
That's right.
But yeah, something like that I think, Alan, I know you and Beck saw that and absolutely loved that movie. I thought it was like just like perfect, turn your brain off for a couple of hours.
It was good? Okay.
Oh, yeah. It was really fun, and it was good to see in the theater. I think that it was nice to see a movie like that in a theater.
Yeah, but not, I mean, it's done okay, but not, I think, what you're talking about, Bernie, not what was expected of it, given
a lot of movies are falling short of their massive budgets, and I think that is one thing that Hollywood's probably going to have to take into consideration, or they're definitely going to take into consideration going forward. Is like they're going to cut budgets like anytime now, because I mean, really, like, how did it cost as much money as it did to make The Fall Guy, right? Or Mad Max, Furiosa. Like, why aren't certain movies hitting? Like, why have they plateaued in the numbers that Pete just gave us? I have to think Marvel slumped this year, fell off the map. There was really nothing great that came out of the Marvel universe this year. For the first time in a long time, they did not have a flagship movie. They have offloaded all of their stars, which they're now desperately scraping back. They're hoping, they're telling us, we're all hearing that Deadpool in Wolverine, I'm saying it with a Canadian accent, not our Ryan Reynolds, that's good. This is going to be the movie that brings, Marvel back. I think that Hollywood in general would love it if Marvel could find its way back, because then, I think once you go and you see a great Marvel movie, say, like an Infinity War or, a Thor Ragnarok, right? For instance, you go see a great Marvel movie, you pay the freight, you deal with the bullshit, of like the disrespectful people in theater, if there are them, or the high prices.
But you had a great experience, and then you're like, oh, we got to go to the movies again.
And then you go see the Fall Guy or the Fallout Boy guy.
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's, the writer's strike. So one thing I noticed when I saw the bike riders was that all the previews, or at least 2 or 3 of them, were foreign films, because they don't have a writer's strike, and they're more like an independent film that's actually about people, that's actually like a story. I don't see that, and we haven't seen that for quite a while in American cinema. Well, that's not true. The film that All of Us Strangers that Pete was talking about, like, that was amazing. I did not see that in the theater, but I still found it like mesmerizing. So there are still films like that. Unfortunately, they don't do as well, but I think it's the writer's strike. We just don't have the movies out from the past year in 2024 that are going to make money that people are interested in seeing. That's A. B is like the economy in general. I don't even think it really has anything to do with the movie theaters so much. I think it's mostly the economy. Like, everything is so expensive. It's all I can do to afford on one income. And I make, I thought, a pretty decent salary, but now it's really just an average person salary. So people just don't have the extra money. And if you think about it, like, if you're a teenage kid and you're taking your you're taking your girlfriend on a date and you're going to a movie, it's going to be about $60-$70 to get popcorn, candy, and sodas and the tickets. Like, it's going to be close. How do you, as a teenager, unless mommy and daddy are paying for it, how are you paying for that date?
Selling drugs on the side.
I mean, working at the theater, who's also not making any money, so they're not giving you any hours. Like, what are you doing? So it's like the economy, and just, I think it's a combination of things. And I think people actually want to see better movies, and I think they want to see movies with stories. And yeah, it's great to have an Avatar. It's great to have those Marvel films. I don't like to speak badly about them, because they keep things exciting, and they can be very well written and great films. But I think people are hungry for a little more, because we're realizing that
not enough substance.
Yeah, we're realizing that, like, it's like more about quality rather than quantity.
I will say, to jump off that too, the other factor, Brooke, to throw into the soup there is maybe just straight up time, because even if you could afford it, and even if there was something good, I think a lot of the studios have now made it where they're also trying to maintain their respective streaming services. So you also, I think, get the extra curveball that you may get something like The Mandalorian that was put on Disney Plus as a billboard to get people to subscribe to the service. But if Disney Plus didn't exist, would that have been a movie that Jon Favreau would have directed that now maybe would have created a number of different sequels by the time that we would be watching them now, because they're not separating their time and their budget and their promotion to different things, right? Like you can, if you're just focusing on the theater, you can put your best stuff out there. You can take chances with movies that may not do well, but you're always putting something out in theater. So it gives Alan and Rebecca something to watch every 2 weeks, because that would work. But if now you're like, ooh, like I do want to watch a show like Fallout on Prime, well, maybe that would have been a movie at one point. And that would have been a movie that maybe would have gotten me to go see it in the theater. But now because it's a TV show, I just watch it at home. It feels like it's just like so many, like it's not one thing, right? It feels like there's like 6,000 different things all working against having a theater full of people. And this is on a podcast full of people that want to be in a theater full of people.
Yeah. And the other thing about time you're mentioning is the time of movies. They're so long now. That, I think, hurts when people can go, you have to commit 3 hours to going to a movie because of all of the, the previews and stuff, which, I mean, there's so many of now.
Tack on an extra 30 minutes just for previews and commercials now.
The previews, there's commercials. The movies themselves are often over 2 hours. The 90-minute movie barely exists anymore. I do think we need that back.
It almost feels like it's a catch-22. We're going to get you in theater, so we got to give you something big to watch, like a sequel to Top Gun or a sequel to Gladiator or something. It's got to be big enough to get asses in the seats. Also, we're going to have such a massive budget that we can't figure out how to do, so we're just going to make it longer. And also, at the same time, you have an audience that, as they skew younger, has now grown up at a place where they could literally just hit pause and come back to it later. I think viewing habits have changed. And even like those of us that were okay, watching a long movie in theaters, now it's like, ooh, like this is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. Did it really need to be 2 hours and 40 minutes long? Because you're talking to people who would be here for 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I'm starting to second guess you a little bit.
There's special ones that should be that way. Like, the Lord of the Rings, that we all would have sat through so many hours for that. I really wish that all of the Harry Potter movies had been super long. I would have taken a 3-hour Harry Potter movie, absolutely. But these average movies, they're not expecting to be the biggest movies of the year. They don't need to be that long. They really don't, because it's going to make a difference when, you're trying to decide, can we go to this? But we can't get there until there's, an 8:00 movie. But now I'm not going to be home until 11:30 at night. That's too long.
It still blows my mind when I go back and look at like old movies like Dracula, Frankenstein from like 1931, and they were 65 minutes.
Yep.
Like you could tell a complete story and become a classic in just over an hour. And I agree. Like I've got no problem sitting through a super long movie because, if it's something like really good that I'm invested in, you almost don't want it to end. So you want to like really just absorb that world. But I think there's a lot of stuff on there that, especially some of the, action comedy movies, like your Bad Boys type stuff that could really be 80, 90 minutes, like in and out. Like that should be like, not should be, that can be like economical storytelling. And that maybe is a little more tailored towards that audience that doesn't have the 3 hours to give up on a weekend afternoon or a weeknight. That it's like, you start thinking about like, well, I got to get up for work or I got to get my kids up for school. It'd be great to go check out a movie, even like a 6:00 showing. But then if I'm not getting home like that, like you said, till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, then that changes the equation really quickly.
It's refreshment time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building.
every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
We've a large assortment of freshly made sandwiches. How about a pizza? None better anywhere. Sizzling hamburgers grilled to your taste. Mouth-watering chili dillies.
The nice part of it is, there's one waiting for you right now at the refreshment stand.
We should transition a little bit from things that have maybe kept us and people out of the theater to what would keep your asses in the theater. And
Sticky
Alan
seats.
and Beck's sticky seats. Yes. You guys talked about your experience at the Alamo Draft House. Is something like a theater like that curated experience for a cinephile? The posters, the hallway. Pete, we were able to go to an Alamo Draft House the first time for both of us when we were in Raleigh, and everything about it was just like it spoke to me like I imagined it spoke to Bex, you and Alan. Is that the place that would keep you guys going to movies?
Of course, we're gonna keep going to movies no matter what. But where we go is definitely like changing. I think we love that place. We want to go back a lot more. Like we talked about the Kendall Square Cinema, where it is an older style of theater, though. Like that, we really like too. We tend to go for little individual places that feel a little different. We will go to a Showcase Cinema, which is a big like multiplex, chain around here, but it's not our favorite. And if we can go somewhere else, we're going to go somewhere else. We like something that feels smaller. We like something that feels like it's dedicated to movies. Salem Cinema is like a 3-screen little place that has really old seating and everything. They do the signs above each theater, like hand-painted signs for what the movie is and like kind of a hint to what it's like. We saw Hocus Pocus there this past year. I think that's what's pulling us in to those places. Is it has to feel a little individual.
Okay.
We're tired of the big multiplex. I get where they make sense for things like the Marvel movies and stuff, but they don't feel as fun. And they never have as many people. There are always more people in those places that feel individual.
Sure.
Okay.
Even if they're not, like Alamo Draft House, there's, a lot of different ones, but they're not set up like a big open floor plan with a concession stand in the middle. And then you go down the hall to your theaters. They're set up differently. And each one is a little bit different.
Bex brings up a good point, right? Is like in these indie movie theaters, and I think I've said that. I've definitely said this to Pete and Brooke on our texts and when we do calls and we rip apart bad movies. I think that the indie movie theater is the way through. I think that it's going to preserve it for us for the rest of our lives. Are these smaller houses that will carry movies? I mean, I think everything about Alamo Draft House is great, right? I think that we need movie theaters to be more vigilant like they were back in the day about bad behavior. It's just really tough for this generation of kids to sit through a movie without putting on their phone, and then you have the kids watching their own show 2 seats next to you, and it's a really awkward experience, and you've paid all this money. So like really, I think enhancing the experience for the customer. I think if more theaters had talkbacks, one of our greatest experiences ever was going to the Chevalier in Medford, Mass. Did I just pronounce that correctly?
Chevalier.
Fuck yeah, Chevalier. Damn it.
It's unclear.
But we did a Princess Bride rewatch, and everyone was like reciting the movie word for word, laughing at the same time, and it was a really magical night. And that Carrie Elways came out afterwards and did a talk back, and it was just a great night out at the movies. So what's going to get my ass there is tailor it to me and the money that I'm spending there and the money that I'm willing to spend there, because honestly, what this generation and what home theaters have taken away from us is something to do. We don't go to malls anymore. They're closing up all over the place.
Speak for yourself. I'm at the mall every Friday night.
Walking
Trying
around,
to pick up chicks.
feeling it. But we don't. We don't go. Because of home theaters, like we feel this need to be in a lot, and it's really, it's exciting to have shared experiences with other people. convince me to come to your theater, tell me what the perks are for me, tell me how well you're going to treat me. And I'll be there because, like Beck said, we're going to be there anyways. Bring me back on a Saturday night. That's what I want the movies to do.
Yeah.
Brooke, how about you? What keeps you in the theater?
For me, good movies. Honestly, good movies and people that are genuinely interested in going. You have to have an audience that is genuinely interested in seeing stories about people. And I really think if Hollywood focused, there's nothing wrong with a blockbuster. Look, I went and saw Terminator 2, what was that, 7 times in the theater. If you write good stories about people will come to the movies. I will come to the movies. I will come every once in a while to a Marvel movie or a DC movie. I'll do it because it's fun and you need a break sometimes from all the seriousness. But for me, all that you really have to do is you don't have to put blankets, which are gross. Who wants a blanket that someone else used? I bring my own blanket. Thank you. You don't have to put blankets. You don't have to do like these like chintzy wine glasses, like these like plastic wine glasses they had for one of these movies I went to. I don't need any of that. I don't need you to bring my food even. I just want popcorn and pop, soda, whatever you call it, whatever region you're in. I want to sit in the seat. Yes, I would like if it reclines. I do like that. I don't like when it doesn't recline anymore, but a good movie that everyone is like, when you are done watching it, you almost feel like, oh, everyone got this. Like, and sometimes people clap it at the end and like, that's what I want. Like Alan was saying, oh, it's like my church. I totally get that. Like that feeling where everyone is just like into it and like on one note and everyone gets it. That's what I want. But that's going to take more than just people writing good movies. It's going to take a communal, just people kind of getting together and getting back to basics and living in the moment.
This is after the focus group and the person pulls out the checklist. It's like, so some of the things that you guys mentioned, some of the concepts, right? Like amenities, convenience. I think that's going to be something that for people in our age group, with something you mentioned before, Pete, that we have the privilege of being able to afford some of these nights out with the cost of what they are, we're going to expect some of those amenities as well. That's high up there. I think the one thing, too, that both of you guys mentioned, whether you're watching Dawn of the Dead or Princess Bride, is there's like a healthy dose of nostalgia in what brings us to the theater. That's going to be tricky because if you don't have nostalgia for the movie, something like Princess Bride, or when they re-released the Transformers 85 movie, that, of course, would make me go. But if you don't have a nostalgia for the movie or for the theater-going experience, then it becomes a little tricky. I think that's the part that makes it really difficult for the folks that are trying to get asses in the seats to keep getting asses in the seats, because those of us with nostalgia are, dying off every day. So we don't remember those things. But, at some point, we'll go watch something because it meant something to us when we were younger. But I'm wondering if with a lot of things, and even this reference, the mileage varies, like our theater is just going to be vinyl, where you're going to have a smaller audience of people who it's made for and people who are going to be willing to pay more for the experience. But it's just smaller. And that's where, like we were talking about earlier, Alan, the movies have to then reflect those budgets. Maybe every once in a while you'll see something that's big, but every once in a while will be fewer and far between. You'll get 1 or 2 big movies. Everything else will be in that manageable range.
2 points is one, a lot more theaters are doing re-releases of movies, even if they're short, even if they're not making a big deal of it. I think that's going to help a lot because people like to see them and you're going to draw people in. They should stick to cheaper prices for those. That's going to draw people in. Some of the theaters here does like $5 flicks. I remember as a kid, I was visiting family in Indiana and I went to a $1 movie theater to have those cheaper options to watch older movies. That's exciting. That should pull people in. And the other thing is what Brooke was talking about with the stories, having good movies come back. I want that. Plus, I need the quality of a movie to come down a little bit. The actual film quality, it's too good looking Like, we just don't need to have it be such high definition, you know?
Hashtag make movies grainy again. Is that what we're doing?
Going back to 35 millimeter film.
Your attention, please. If you're leaving the theater, please hang your speaker on the speaker stand before starting your car. Don't take chances on accidents which may damage your car. If you accidentally tear off your speaker, please don't be frightened. Simply turn it in. There is no charge for reinstalling speakers.
Well, I think, and some of that comes back around to, theaters have to come up with a financial model that works for them too. We can all agree that, I think we'd all love the Alamo Drafthouse experience, but they just had to find a buyer because the one just closed, and then unless I'm misremembering, like someone had to come in and like buy the whole chain, didn't they?
It was Sony who came in and they bought. There were like 10 theaters that, if I remember right, were part of the Alamo Drafthouse, and they were owned by the same franchisee. And when they declared bankruptcy, and I believe a lot of their theaters were kind of localized in one area, and then they had 2 or 3 locations kind of, separate from where they were. And then I believe Sony came in and bought them.
And that caused a bit of an uproar because there used to be a rule that prohibited studios like Sony from running theaters, which I think has now gone by the wayside. So that's probably a different discussion for a different time. My bigger point being those more tailored experiences that I think we're all kind of looking forward to or resonate with us. I try never to take for granted that these places are going to be around forever, because we always find those instances, for every, Coolidge Corner, there's the West End Cinema in DC that I used to love going to that closed. The Smithtown Theater where I grew up that had those dollar movies every Thursday. We would wait to see what was going to be playing that Thursday. And like all our friends, we'd all go, Thursday night to whatever that second run movie was. That's now a performing arts center, which is great because it's an historic building, but they've had to go through 2 rounds of having the public kind of come in last minute to raise the money just to keep that from being demolished. And so like every time that you think that something's out there, that you've got this in your back pocket, like, well, at least we always have this. We always have this. It may not always be the case because unfortunately things change and nothing lasts forever. So I always try to make sure that I'm appreciating just the fact that these places like Alamo, Coolidge, Brattle, they're around, they're accessible to us. And the Carolina Theater, we have the ability to go to these places because they may not be here forever. All it takes is some unfortunate incident or something happening, and they could be gone in the next minute. So I'm appreciative of the fact that they are there and have been there in the past, that we've been able to have the experiences that we all have had to see amazing movies, amazing experiences, and just being amongst that crowd of like-minded people and experiencing that collective joy of seeing first run movie, second run movie, classic, whatever it might be. It's an amazing thing to get to experience. To end it on a more uplifting note, if you could pick one experience that you had going to the movies that you still remember, it could be just an anecdotal, it could be something that happened in the theater, something on screen. Is there anything that jumps to mind?
Yeah, for me, my parents brought me to see 8 Mile when it came out, and the theater oversold the tickets. People just sitting on the floor, crowded everywhere. They were just camped out on the floor. They let us do it. I don't know why they did. It was definitely like a fire hazard, but that was really awesome. Yeah, also it was a little weird that my parents brought me to see 8 Mile, but it's fine. It was totally okay and cool and not at all awkward during the sex scene. Yeah, sitting on the floor with my parents.
Nice.
Never is.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. It's just so hard. I've seen so many movies in the theater, so it really is very hard. Like, I've thought of so many things just talking to you all. Just one for me. I mean, Forrest Gump was actually really special to me because I was in love with Tom Hanks at the time. Like, who wasn't in the 90s? And I was 14 or 15, something like that. This is so dumb, but like there's something about Mary. I saw that movie in the theater, and I just when I think about that first time I saw that movie, my stomach hurts. Like I can feel my abs hurting from laughing. So, because we never seen, like, now we watch it, it's just dumb, it was just shock value. But like I still love that movie. But at the time, I was like, this is so funny. I had never seen anything like this before. Like, I'd never laughed that hard in a theater. And to me, like, laughing in a theater, one of the best feelings ever when you're with a bunch of friends. And I was with like 5 of my friends, and we're all teenagers and we're all stupid. And we think this is the silliest, funniest thing ever when she's putting the hair gel in her hair and like the dog's running around like a maniac. And it's so dumb now. Like, I watch the movie now, like, this isn't even really that funny. But like at the time, like, I couldn't, like, for 2 days, my abs hurt. And to me, that's like, it's not the best movie in the world, but that's what I think of when I'm thinking of like standout experiences in a movie theater.
I think we could do a whole episode on this. I have 10 stories, like, because I've been to the movie so much with my friends and with Rebecca and, different things that have happened. But I mean, I think the biggest standout one for me was when me and my friends we saw The Sixth Sense. And of course, like, this was the late 90s. So like we were like high all the time. And it was a very bad movie to get stoned for, anxiety. And that was The Sixth Sense. M. Night Shyamalan brought out the jump scare just by moving the camera in a certain direction that no one had ever done before, right? And the first real jump scare that you get in that movie is when the house goes cold, the haunted apartment goes cold, and the kid is like, "Hey, you can see my dad's gun," and he's got the ripped open head, and then the woman in the kitchen that he thinks is his mom turns around and she's like, shows him the cuts on her wrists, and all the cabinets are open, and everybody in the fucking theater jumped out of their seats, right? It was like that experience of like a shared scare that like everybody goes up. And I'll never forget, I was so out of shape back then and fueled by like beer and weed and takeout food that like my hamstrings cramped. I was like trying to sit back down and my hamstrings were stuck. And so my friends like pushed me out of the seat, and I was like walking up and down the movie aisle trying to watch it. Everybody was telling me to get back into my seat. And I'm like limping around trying to work out this like super pulled hamstring, drinking Pepsi, thinking that that's going to hydrate me, standing in the back, screaming like a maniac through The Sixth Sense because I couldn't sit down because the first jump scare almost tore my hamstring off the bone.
I will say, Alan, I think you just wrote the new poster for like the 30th anniversary of Sixth Sense. First jump scare almost tore my hamstring. Alan, that's why you watch it, for that quote right there. That's it. I do, thinking about The Sixth Sense. I've got like all of you guys, I probably have way too many to mention. I remember watching The Sixth Sense and Stir of Echoes the same night in the same theater, going from one screen to the other, because Sixth Sense was just a great experience. That the person I was with, we were like, this was so good. And she agreed. And we're like, do we go see this movie again? Like, it's like, oh, there's this other movie with Kevin Bacon called Stir of Echoes. And that one didn't disappoint. It was also good. But the best story I have, all right, I mentioned it before, but it makes sense here. So it's a midnight showing of Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. For every Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, there's like 80 Italian ripoff versions of movies. And The Beyond is one of the good ones. And it's very creepy and ethereal. Like, the whole movie feels like a dream, because it's not as, I don't know, like A to B. Oh, a bunch of people in a farmhouse, we got to figure out how to get out. This is, oh, there's like random zombies in a basement with their eyes poked out and spiders coming out of everywhere. And there's an apocalypse happening. It's like, it's completely weird. So my buddy and I, Steve, we go to the Music Box in Chicago to see the movie at midnight. We get out at about 2 a.m. and we've seen a ton of horror movies. We've seen a lot of gore, and we're still a little kind of taken aback by what we just saw because it was very weird. We get in the car, we hit that first light, and all of a sudden, we're just chatting about the movie, kind of processing it. About 100 naked bicyclists come right past us on what was like one of those like 2:30 in the morning naked bike rides. And we're both just sitting there looking at this and be like, what is this? And then we're both looking at each other saying, are we in the movie? Like, are we like, what the hell is going on? And it just wouldn't stop. So many naked people on bikes, all shapes and sizes. I mean, the bikes and the people. The light just changed and we're just sitting there looking at each other going like, what the hell is going on? It was just very trippy. Without the involvement of any drugs or torn hamstrings, but always an experience that I will always remember because it made a movie that was already really creepy, just a little creepier. Kind of like watching Blair Witch, because I swear to God, I dropped off my buddy Dre after we saw Blair Witch on opening night. And he said, I slept with the lights on. And I swear to God, if anyone was in the corner, he's like, I was just going to start swinging a bat in the corner until I hit something. All just fun experiences that just, like, you brought the movie home with you. That's how I felt. The movie didn't end in the theater. I got to take it home with me. Pete, how about you?
I'll give a quick anecdote. Yeah, there's so many. The interesting thing about this one is that I'm trying to remember what the actual movie was. This was more just like what took place in the theater. So this was at the aforementioned Smithtown Theater. This was one of those Thursday night movies. I want to say it was maybe Benny and June that we all went to see. These were like events. Like Thursday, the second run movie would drop. The theater would be packed. Smithtown Theater had a balcony, just very historic, cool theater. The place was sold out or close to sold out, so theater's full. Lights haven't quite dimmed yet. We're all there's 2 rows of me and my friends, just getting ready. We got our popcorn, and before the lights drop, this woman comes walking down the aisle a couple of rows in front of us and confronts this couple sitting there. Turns out that this guy had brought someone who is not his girlfriend to the movie. Girlfriend found out about it, basically confronted him in front of the entire theater. He was trying to defend himself in some way, did a really shitty job of it. She finally at one point just took the popcorn, knocked the popcorn. Popcorn goes up in the air everywhere. The entire, not the entire audience, but a lot of other people in the audience took that as a sign for them to throw their popcorn in the air. And they everyone's throwing their popcorn up in the air. She tells this guy off. He slinks off to just the loudest round of applause for this woman for confronting this asshole. And he had to do the walk of shame up the aisle out of the theater before the movie even started. And we were, Benny and June was a good movie, but afterwards in the parking lot, all we were talking about was the woman confronting the boyfriend and humiliating him in front of an entire theater of people. So that's one of my fun anecdotes that I still remember. It's just one of those I can still picture where I was sitting. I can picture looking down those couple of rows as it was all happening. And we were all just like, what the fuck just happened? That's crazy.
That's awesome.
Movie magic right there.
That's movie magic right there.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.